Welcome, everyone, to the Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series where leaders come to share their perspectives on different leadership topics. I'm Josh Seldin, and today's guest is Lisa Friscia. Lisa Friscia is a strategic advisor and fractional chief people officer who fixes the systems underneath the symptoms. When teams are burned out, decisions stall, or performance slips, she designs the operating infrastructure that holds the organization together. A former classroom teacher, founding principal, and chief people officer, Lisa partners with founders and leadership teams to design clear decision rights, strong talent systems, and execution rhythms that scale. Her work helps organizations move from reactive firefighting to sustainable performance. She writes All Things Talent, a practical publication for founders and operators who want to build high-performing organizations without burning out their people. She believes the best-run organizations are not the ones that hustle hardest. They're the ones built right. So welcome, Lisa.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you, and I'm excited for this topic because I feel like it's going to sound a little silly to people when we first say it, but it happens all the time and is super important.
And it doesn't matter the industry. Like at first, I thought things were like, oh, this just happens in education. And it's PE-backed organizations, it's startup, it's tech, it's everywhere. It's just a human situation.
It is. So, for the people who don't know what we're talking about, it's accidental people leaders. And like we said, it exists. So, to kick us off, can you just explain what we mean by accidental people leaders and kind of how that happens in the first place?
Yeah. So I think there's a few categories of accidental people leaders that I found. One is the founder who cares deeply about whether it's a social cause or their solution to a problem. And then all of a sudden they look up and they're like, oh, I'm the one in charge of everything. And not just even just one team, but really in charge of figuring it all out. Or it could be the founder who has great people skills and then they hire the second layer of managers and things start to break down because they're not the ones carrying it. Or they're really awesome subject matter expert. They just know their content so well, they understand how to set strategy, and then they have to get other people to do it. So I'd say those are the three folks that I've talked to the most.
And so, in your opinion, based on what you have seen and all these people that you've talked to, as you mentioned, the ones that I normally see are maybe your high performers, executors, the people who are
Mhm.
really, really good at doing the work.
Yeah.
And we see that and we go, hey, you should move on to the next level.
Yeah.
And as you said, maybe your SMEs, your subject matter experts are very technical based and aren't normally people based. And so you now have this high performer who is now in this leadership role, this people leader role. What are some of the things that they tend to miss as they step into this new role?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, which I think bleeds into the mindset as well, which is in the past, if they needed to get more work done, they just could hustle harder, right?
Mhm.
Stay up late, work harder, reach out to resources, and you could push through. But when you are a people leader, you are creating the container for other people to be doing this work. And so that is a very different operating system. So I think that's the first. And then the second is because they are usually so good at what they do, there's not a level of flexibility to think through how can other people get to the same bottom lines. And so they have to really clarify, well, what actually are we trying to do? And then what are actually my non-negotiables slash parameters? So I'd say those are the two biggest errors. And
Mhm.
I count myself in this too. um, I'm definitely guilty, but I think those are the two biggest errors I've seen.
How do people like that trigger themselves when that happens? Because if I am an executor and I've done this day in and day out for 10 years and I am the subject matter expert and I can do it with my eyes closed, my first reaction is to do that. And
Yeah.
now that I'm leading people and building capability in people, if I need somebody else to do that instead, and I am now the coach and the enabler instead of the executor, what do I need to do to kind of check myself to make sure I don't overstep and push somebody out of the way and
Yeah.
go for efficiency? Because obviously I'll do it faster because I know how to do it, but rather start building that capability in the next generation of people.
Yeah. One quick thing that I would disabuse people of is yes, you can 100% do it faster, except you're going to have to be doing more and more things. So that system's going to break really quickly. So
Right.
sometimes you do have to go a little slower to go further later. In all honesty, I had a great mentor. I had some great coaches. I provide that space. I think the first thing to do is just recognizing it and finding a really good coach or mentor who
Mhm.
can give you the mental space because you have to really reconstruct how you operate
Right.
within the workspace. And that requires you to take a step back and ask yourself these questions, which is like, what matters? What am I actually okay with? Where can I let somebody fall on their face? There's so many questions to ask. So I think it starts with that reorientation
Mhm.
of my job is not to do the thing. My job is to make sure everyone is doing that thing. And I would say, yeah, finding a good coach, mentor, if your boss doesn't have the capacity to do that, or, sometimes it's not people's skills, and that's okay. I think that's definitely important. And I think getting a community of peers that don't work in your organization, if you can do that, I think that's a game changer.
Yeah. And I think personally, you have to make sure that you enable those people to help you. You got to get rid of that ego and say, hey, I'm asking for this. People are going to give me this gift of feedback that I'm asking for. And now I can't get defensive when they're like, hey, why don't you back off and let, Sarah go do this job instead of you? That person can't now take offense to that and say, oh my God, why are you telling me to go do this? It's something that's one, necessary, and two, you're kind of asking for. But I've seen that too, where somebody asks for that mentorship and then immediately gets defensive once they get that.
Yeah. And I think, like when you said that, the first example, and he never was this person, but I had, mentored and worked with this executive director for a while. We'd known each other for 9 years. And I remember saying, you need to let some people do some other things. And he cracked and was like, but this thing happened and this thing happened. And it's like, I've been in that situation. You're holding multiple things at the same time, too, which is why I think that safe space is important. And also finding a mentor that allows you to do that and then be like, okay, but really, how do we move forward with it?
And it's so tough because especially these people who have been in these roles for so long, and I think the longer you're in it and the longer you're maybe a subject matter expert or you've been doing this grind, it's very difficult for people to separate the work from their sense of self. And so you may have this person who's been doing this for 15 years. I am a subject matter expert in all things hot melt, glues and everything that go on. But now you don't need me to do that. Now I just need to coach these people. And I start
Mhm.
losing this sense of self that I've built for 15 years and I don't know what to go do. And I feel like that really rocks people sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of it. And I think to be real, I think this is why you need multiple pathways to leadership within an
Mhm.
organization. Some people do that work for a while and then they want to get closer to the work. That's the thing with getting promoted is sometimes we get more and more disconnected from the thing that we loved the most. It's
Yeah.
like one of my favorite things to do, even as chief people officer, was just like sit in a classroom and like watch and hang out with kids. And that wasn't the best use of my time all the time, but there is a sense of loss that you have to acknowledge.
Right. And I remember when I was sitting in my college classes, that was something one of my professors told me. They said, you're in this technical field, understand that you'll do the most technical work when you get out of school. And then the higher up you go, the less technical work you'll do and the more
Yeah.
managerial work and people work. And a lot of people just don't internalize that fact.
But I think, and maybe this is the teacher in me, but when I was able to reorient my brain to helping people be the best professionals that they could be and figure out their voice and be able to say to the organization, look what my VP did, or look what my senior director did. Like that's its own sense of fulfillment too. So I think in addition to the loss, understanding that you just have not bigger capacity, but also bigger impact. Your impact is far reaching because you're essentially scaling yourself.
And I think that's so important is this sense of fulfillment changes or it needs to change. You have to reorient your
Yes.
thinking exactly like you said, because I've now spent all this time saying I'm executing this and I am fulfilled because I am successfully doing this work. And now you have to shift your thought process of I am now setting up my team to be able to successfully do this work. And I will get a sense of fulfillment when they are successful, not specifically when I am successful at executing something.
Yeah. And I think still, especially in like service-based, mission-driven industries, understanding that that's going to impact even more people at the end of the day.
And, you know, this conversation made me think of something. And I know we focused a lot on maybe the individual, the executor who's now a people leader, but thinking of their leadership, how can they shift? My first thought was like a rewards and recognition system. So this person has now been rewarded and recognized for being an executor for so long. And a lot of times it's so easy to say, well, now that they're not the executor, I'm not going to reward them anymore. How do they now shift their thought process as their leaders to make sure that you still reward and recognize and have people feel appreciated in this new accidental leadership role?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that you can do. I think one is that, and I go back to performance management consistently because our values exist on our calendars, on our budgets, and performance evals. Like those are the three places you're going to see it.
Yeah.
And so if you don't explicitly tell people as they're being promoted, that they're being evaluated not just on their ability to get something done or their team's ability to get something done, which is, of course, important, but
Mhm.
also how are you empowering your team? How are you creating space? How are you getting your team to understand context? So it's not just about you, it's about the team. And that's how we designed hiring systems for both school leaders, but also back office, VPs. I've done C-level searches. You have to explicitly assess for that
Right.
because you're also sending the signal to that person. This is the job. Like this is
Right.
the work. And so I think from an organizational standpoint, that's incredibly important to just
Mhm.
set from there. But I think understanding that, and I had to make this shift that feelings are data. I was very used to like school data, student data, but like feelings are data too. People are data. Stakeholders are people to invest and involve in. And so usually, and I think the type of person we're talking about is usually a very structured thinker. I think very people-centered
Mhm.
accidental leaders have a slightly different path for them. But for the person who's like very much a systems person, understanding that people are a part of the system. I would say the opposite for the very people-driven leaders who were always willing and able to sit down with anyone and sit for hours. It's like they don't have the time to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And helping them to reimagine systems are care so that when someone comes to you, it's because a high-level problem, not because there's so many fires and you're playing whack-a-mole. So you want to utilize people's strengths. That's what got them there. And it's just reorienting how they think about both.
And what's the best way? I know we kind of talked about mentorship and peer sponsoring. How do we keep them on that path? They're going to get this feedback, but as you kind of see them stray, because it is tough to kind of make that jump from executor to more high level thinking, when you see them starting to stray from that path, how do you really get them back in a way that doesn't make them feel bad about not doing it right in the first place?
I think I have different answers depending on my role.
Sure.
So I think as a chief people officer, hopefully you are training different levels of people to help
Mhm.
them. How are you helping navigate that you're defaulting to executor and not the strategist that you need to be? I think organizationally, I personally very much believe that there needs to be spaces for folks at the same level to come together and problem solve, case studies, what have you, because usually these are smart people. So if you gave them a multiple choice test on what they needed to do as a leader, they'd get an A. That looks really different when there's a deadline and you have a person out and someone else is on medical leave, and all of the things that have been ingrained in you are going to come out in that moment until you really train yourself to slow down and be more intentional. So I think from a structural standpoint, those are the things that an organization needs to care about. And I also think that person also has to care. And so
Right.
how do we get that person to understand this is important and it's going to be hard and you're going to screw up along the way. And so you have to create that space for that person to also be self-monitoring. So whether that's different developmental plans or what have you, but that person has to understand that that is part of the job and they're not going to nail it probably in the first 3 to 6 months. And there might be some things you're always going to work on.
That's right. You know, Lisa, you hit the nail on the head for me in this one because so many people, I'd say the new people leaders that are finding themselves in this situation and their leaders as well, don't realize that being a people leader is a muscle that you build over time. Just like you said, they feel like it's supposed to be like a light switch to them. Hey,
Mhm.
on Friday, I'm this executor, and I've now
Yeah.
been promoted. And on Monday, I'm a people leader, and some magic is going to happen over the weekend that's going to make me know exactly what I need to go do on Monday, even though I haven't ever done that before. And that's just so important for people hearing this to realize is that
Yeah.
it is a muscle. And, you know, it's just like when you're building your own body's muscle. I'm going to work it out. I'm going to have
Mhm.
my rest days. I'm going to have days where I don't do so well. And it's just everything you just said is so critical, but people don't internalize that.
And I think we've got to shift how leadership development takes place often. I don't think that we normalize the challenge enough. And I don't think that that takes away from the urgency. I think these are people who want to succeed, but I think that's really important. I think it's really important to help people to understand they need a diverse board of directors and an advisory board, whatever you want to call it. One of the reasons I love leading cohorts, whether that was the leadership training program that I developed or when I do 5 to 6 week programs, is inevitably when you're doing all these questions, someone's really good at one thing and someone else is good at other. And they start to see each other and
Right.
they start to realize, oh, you're the yin to my yang. And you start to see these professional relationships build. And I think of when I ran a manager series for my old organization, there was one woman who was just brilliant at relationships. She just make a room fall in love with her. It was just magic. And another person so good at systems. And they were lacking in the other area, and they found each other, and I would see them working together, problem solving, like, oh, let me practice my speech, and can you look at my deck? And that's when you create a real learning culture in an organization, because people are
Yep.
doing that not because I made them, I didn't set them up as buddies. They just recognized the importance of it and found each other. And I think that speaks a lot to what we can accomplish when we're really creating communities of learning.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, I get back to as we talk, and I think the leaders of these new people leaders, how do they need to have their own mindset shift? Because you now have this person who you thought highly enough to promote in the first place, and this may be the person that you never had to worry about. If you had to skip any one-to-ones, it was with them because they already
Mhm.
have it. They don't need the coaching. And now you have this mindset as their leader of, I don't need to coach this person because they've got it. And now you've put them in a new situation where they don't got it.
Yeah.
How does that leader now shift their mindset of, hey, I may actually need to intentionally coach this person now when I didn't
Yeah.
have to before?
So let's start at the very beginning, which
Yeah.
is hopefully you have a people leader, and I mean actually an HR business partner or chief
Mhm.
people officer or someone who is helping you to be disciplined about what are the things that you're seeing. What do we not have evidence on? We can't say that they're bad or good, that you just haven't seen evidence of it.
Mhm.
And then where are the gaps? And again, no one's going to be perfect. It's not that everyone's going to get 100 to get promoted. That's not what we're talking about. But you have to go in with eyes wide open on what those gaps could or could not be.
Mhm.
And hopefully you'll have given stretch opportunities beforehand
Yeah.
and all those things. But let's say that hasn't happened. I think it's really helping those folks because they probably weren't trained in any of this either. So, like,
Right.
we've got to give
No one
grace to
is.
them too,
Yeah.
to say, here's how I worked with senior leaders on how do you do your check-ins with these folks and how do you not just have it as self-report, but when are you looking at data? When are you looking under the hood? When are you observing them in action? And that's going to look different with different departments and rules and what have you.
Mhm.
And hopefully we worked really hard on creating a rubric that would give them the language to be able to talk to their folks because they wouldn't necessarily think to analyze that. If everything is in on time, why do I care? But if you have to give an evaluation based on things, now you're evaluating that. I think we underestimate how much support senior leaders need as well. Also, because they're moving a million miles a minute too. So when I did mid-level leader training, I would make sure that the senior leaders had a series of questions to ask in their next check-in. I
Hmm.
was like, the how, you guys figure it out. I'm not even getting involved in finance or data, but you should be asking, what did you learn from this? Where are you applying it? What's exciting about it? What's still confusing so that everyone's saying the same thing? So I think that's incredibly important. And I've done a series of trainings at Chief now where it's about managing managers.
Mhm.
And it's been very popular because people were like, I just got to learn how to manage direct reports, ICs, and now I'm managing people who manage teams and I don't want to micromanage. So people want that training. People want that support.
Yeah. And it's so important to, and you said this earlier on in our conversation of slowing down to speed up. And I think it's so important for both this new people leader and their leaders to really slow the process down and give them this training and give them this capability building. And I feel like we live in this world now where we focus on productivity and there are layoffs, and there's less people, the work never goes away. So it's not like,
Right.
oh, we don't need these people because the work's not there. The work's still there. We just reduce the people. And so with the crazy world we live in today, we never say, hey, I'm going to pause or slow down to build this capability and this training, all these great trainings you've mentioned.
Yeah.
We're just going to power through it. And that's when we start seeing all of our leaders burn out.
So I realize the word training is really loaded in a lot of spaces, but I think we need to also reimagine what trainings are because you should walk out being able to do something on Monday.
Mhm.
And that should be a space for you to actually workshop a real life work problem that you're having. People do not have time to go to a training, schedule time to apply it. If that's your plan, that's just not going to work. It's funny, I'm just designing a webinar on this right now. But it's really about understanding where are the pain points that leaders are having in the organization, creating space where you're learning some frameworks. And really, the majority of the time is people diagnosing their personal, what's going on in your context,
Mhm.
maybe looking at examples of what it could look like, workshopping agendas. So I think that's the first thing is that making sure when people are together, it's that important. And then there's a lot of really great async work that's happening. I'm an advisor for Dick Stago, which is a soft skills AI coach. And granted, this is more for early entry roles, though Ioana's thinking through how to support leaders with this.
Yeah.
But it's really quick micro moments that people can really then apply. So I think rethinking learning and development so that it really is thinking about how you are helping people to do the work in the work, not treating them as two separate things.
I love that idea of the soft skills AI coach. I personally have just been jumping into AI where I can, and I'm obviously a big fan of soft skills. So I am, I guess, over time now thinking how much we always say soft skills. And because they're soft skills, there's these optional skills that we're going to possibly go and train people on. And, we see today it's so much more important to make them these skills. They're not just like these soft extra skills, they're
Yeah.
skills we need to go do
Yeah.
because it allows us to have this human interaction with all of our people.
The other term I've used is durable skills because
Mhm.
they
I
exist
love that.
regardless of the role. And as you get promoted, those are the ones that are actually the most important. And I would also say for everyone freaking out about AIs replacing jobs, the durable skills and the critical thinking are the two things that are going to differentiate you no matter what technological shifts happen.
You're exactly right. And I love that durable skills. So, as you think of soft skills and durable skills, one thing that I'm a firm believer in the foundation that those help build is trust. And I feel like for these people that are now these new people leaders, how they build trust with their teams, these people they manage, is probably different than what they did before. Because
Yeah.
before, their technical skills built the trust for them. Somebody had a problem, and I'm technical, and I'm going to go fix this problem for you, and I'm going to execute. And when I do well, you trust in my ability. But now you need to trust me as your leader and trust that my direction is the right thing, my vision is the right thing, my coaching is right. How do they now shift how they use maybe those durable skills and their actions to build trust in this new way they're not used to?
Yeah, for that person who has been able to build trust in their technical skill, my question would be, how did you build that trust within technical skill? It's because you said what you were going to do, you said what you meant, and you meant what you said, that you over time showed you could deliver or come up with a solution or problem solve. People knew what they were getting with you on a consistent basis, and you proved it in that way. And the same thing is true for the people work. I think it's more like multi-directional in a lot of different ways because different people are going to need different things from you. But are you engaging in conversations on one-on-ones? Are you engaged in that conversation? Are you clear on your decision making? Are you clear on what you want that person to do? Are you also taking steps back to say, like, oh, that didn't go well. Let's talk about it and figure it out. And the example I usually give in coaching and sessions is, do you feel like you're sitting across the table at someone talking at them? Or do you feel like you're shoulder to shoulder looking at the problem together? And the more that you can be in that space, and show like, yep, when Lisa says she's going to do X, she does X. Or, yep, when Lisa can't tell me X, Y, and Z, but she always tells me other stuff. So I know this has to be. It's the same sort of bank account that you're building up with your people.
That's so interesting. And I love that example because I use the same thing, this bank account, this trust bank account where you deposit all of these positive trust situations and then,
Hmm.
generally you withdraw a lot more when you break that trust. And so
Yeah.
I love the question because it's just so important and people again overlook these little things. And when you are a people leader and you build that trust, people will do amazing things for you versus if you just think, hey, I'm the leader and I'm just going to dictate what needs to happen, they're just going to go do it.
Yeah.
It's different.
Well, also, hopefully, your team is filled with really smart people too, and
Yeah.
they're going to be seeing things that you're not going to see. And so, if you cut off that conversation and you make it very top down and directive, you're not going to get critical information. And
Right.
that is ultimately going to hurt outcomes, either because someone doesn't want to tell you anything anymore because you're a director, or because you're just not in the day to day. And so, you're not seeing the same trends that you used to. So, it's really about bidirectional power and conversation so that people are really working together from their perch.
So going back to the individual who is now an accidental people leader, when they get into this role, what are the top 1 to 3 things that they should focus on in that first, I'd say, 30 to 90 days to make sure that they focus on the right things to start building their capability
Yeah.
as a people leader?
So I think the first thing I would tell anyone stepping into a new role, and I don't care if you were on the team and got promoted, sit down with every single person on that team to find out what is something that they love about working there, what is something that drives them crazy, what's some support that they need. You just have to build in that time to get to know people because even if you know them for 10 years, your relationship has just shifted. So I
Right.
think that's the first piece more than anything else. If you have access to a great performance evaluation if like your organization has a really good leadership one. Otherwise, you can just Google it and figure something out. But doing that self-assessment, I know some people who've done 360s when they start, just so
Hmm.
that they're making sure that they're getting a wide range
Right.
of feedback. So I think starting with that and then deciding what is one or two things that you're going to be working on. But I would say, more than anything else, focusing on your relationships in the first 30 days with all of your stakeholders so that you can then take a step back and see what are the trends and the data points. Because ostensibly, that is someone who is going to be able to solve a problem with data. And so if you just
Yep.
think about all the people that you're working with are now different data points in this crazy scatter plot, I think that that is probably the most important thing in starting off is just building those relationships so that people can get to know you and then you get to know them. But I think those two are incredibly important. I've also seen a lot of benefit, and I did this internally and I've done this a few times where it's 90-day coaching and just having someone running alongside you who's not your boss for 90 days to really help you think about all of the data, all of the shifts and the changes so that you're making sense. Because I do think the first 90 days are really important.
That's an interesting thought process and approach for that 90-day coaching. And in the relationship side, I am a firm believer, and I think that is so critically important. And people don't give that enough time because that then starts everything else. That starts the building of trust, and that starts getting to know everybody, and it starts creating that psychologically safe environment. Because as you said, we hire and have a lot of smart people on the team,
Mhm.
and if it was only up to us and we were the smartest people there, we wouldn't need a team in the first place. So we need to be able to lean on the team, and building those
Yeah.
relationships is a great way to enable that.
Yeah. And even if the situation is a turnaround situation, my guess is that the people know it. Most people aren't walking around not knowing when something isn't working. So getting their perspective is really, really important to understand. Is it a systems issue? Is it a training issue? Is it a misaligned incentives? And so we think about it as sort of like data and the work and relationships, and we silo these things, but each strengthens the other. And so I think we need to think about them all and how they connect.
That makes a ton of sense. So before we wrap up, anything else, Lisa, that you would like to share with everybody?
Oh
Any
my
final thoughts?
You don't have to do this alone. And practice and reflection are so important. Our top athletes know this, our top comedians, top actresses, all of these folks who are brilliant and we know they have natural talent work so incredibly hard watching video of themselves, assessing, practicing, testing. And somehow we don't do it in other spaces. And leadership, in so many ways, it's a muscle, it's a performance, it's all of those things. And I think just honoring that and giving yourself some grace and building community around yourself, I just think is incredibly important.
Yeah, I feel like it's a symptom of the world we live in where we see the highlight reels today and we don't
Hmm.
realize all the work that goes on behind the scenes. And so
Oh my
I
goodness.
see you, Lisa, you are perfect. I don't see all the work that you've put in behind the scenes. And so now I immediately think that I am inferior because I'm nowhere close to your
Or,
situation.
or the mistakes, or the late nights, or the tears. And I try to share that as much as possible so that folks can see this is not a straight line at all.
That's right. That is so important. Hopefully, everybody internalizes that and takes that away from this. But this has been great for everybody. Again, it's Lisa Friscia. I will have all of her information in the posting that we have and in the YouTube video and available for you. If you want to get a hold of her, we'll make sure that can happen. And worst comes to worst, if you can't, just email me and I will get you two together. But there's been a lot of great information here. You can either watch it on the YouTube channel and video here, or you can follow and subscribe to the podcast on any of the other podcast platforms that we have, to my Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Leading Quarters. And you can email me with any ideas or questions you might have for future episodes, or for Lisa at leadingquarters@gmail.com. But I appreciate this, Lisa. Like I said in the beginning, this happens, and there's a lot of things that people don't realize. It just happens naturally, and people just assume people progress naturally without any help. And this is a critically important topic that people really need to think about and stop and reflect on and internalize. So I really appreciate everything that you've brought here for everybody.
Thank you. This was fun.